here's the toughest part, and I guess this is a question that has to be asked and answered, about Mike Conley returning to the Jazz. Are they a better team because of this contract? No, they're not. And I know that that's probably a bit of a gut punch, and I get that. But 3 years, $24 million per. I mean, those are great numbers for the Utah Jazz. Mike Conley left $8 million on the table, depending on who you believe around the NBA, which is awesome. And sources were telling us yesterday that Conley never even talked to another team, turned down the Knicks and the Clippers, did not want to have those discussions with Dallas, because he was firm that he wanted to return to the Utah Jazz. And he wants to prove that he can stay healthy. And that's all well and good. Here's the problem. Now what? You re-sign Mike Conley. Now what? You are still well over the salary cap. You still are going to pay the luxury tax. So now what? That's the biggest question. So, Jake, is this something that Jazz fans should be celebrating?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it kind of goes both ways. So on one hand, yes, it's great to have Mike back. Obviously you've got pretty much all of your core. As it sits today, you have your entire core back intact. But in terms of the cap and in terms of where you'll be the next couple of seasons, I think that's where things kind of get adventurous, because now you're in a position where you really are committed to Mike and you're really committed to, this team that you've had now. And I think that, my question really is, great, you got Mike Conley back, but what is going to be the difference maker, to take you to the next level? Because this team, the way it's currently situated, this team didn't even get to the Western Conference Finals. This team, and you can blame it on injuries or blame it on whatever you want, but the fact is they didn't get there, and you're still committed to a guy. I want to be clear. I love what Mike Conley brings when he's on the floor. I think he's a great point guard, but the problem is just, for me, he's not on the floor enough. And so, you bring this guy back, and my question to Jazz fans is going to be, are we going to have the conversation this coming season when they do make the postseason and Mike Conley's hurt, that you're heartbroken that you got knocked out again? Because that's what we're talking about here. And I think that's the hard reality of the whole situation. Now, I had several people ask me yesterday, well, are the Jazz done? Are they just going to sit here? Is this the team that we're going to ride out with one more time? Ooh. And as it currently sits, yes, this is where you are. But I do think that they are going to look at moving Joe Ingles and trying to relieve some of the cap, pressure that they currently have. And I do think there's opportunity there. Yesterday all over Twitter, it was, the Jazz are trying to make a trade with the Cavs involving Joe Ingles, but I think there are several teams out there, and don't be surprised if he's gone before too long.
Yeah, and I think that bringing Mike Conley back was almost a no-brainer. I think that we've talked about this for a couple of months since the season ended for the Jazz. That they wanted Mike Conley. $24 million, $24.16 million is great. That's a good number for one of the top 5 point guards in the NBA. I'm telling you, though, that this is going to cost you. And the reason it's going to cost you is it will cost you a glue guy like Joe Ingles. Again, people around the NBA were telling us that they don't want to trade Bogey. They want to keep Bojan Bogdanovic, that Quinn Snyder likes the skill set, likes the fit. Bojan fits into their culture. Not to say that Joe Ingles does not fit into their culture. But the issue is that Joe Ingles, he's a guy that's replaceable, very, very replaceable. Mm-hmm. His skill set, where he is in his career, he is clearly on the backside of his career. Again, he looked like he was out of gas. He looks tired in the Olympics. It is pretty clear to those around this club that Joe Ingles and his $13 million, that's the deal that you can move to make a significant impact or upgrade to your roster. I think when you have a core that is Donovan, Rudy, Conley, and Bogey, you're going to win a lot of games. You're going to win most nights. You're not going to win a championship. What they did yesterday does not make this a championship team. Now, what does that mean for Elijah Hughes? I think it means that Elijah Hughes has to play a much more significant role on this team and in this club. I think he has to be a bigger part of the offense this year. I think you're going to have to play young guys. I think you're going to have to put guys in positions that they're, A, not ready to be in, and B, that you don't want to put them in, because that's where you are when you're paying the luxury tax, and you're not the Lakers, who are getting guy after guy after guy saying, hey, I'll take a discount. Hey, sign me. I'll I'll come there for less. When you see that kind of thing happening with the Lakers, that's not where the Jazz are, and that's not what the Jazz are going to get. And I think it makes it very difficult for them to build around this core, Jake. And I think it's going to be very difficult for them to, A, repeat at the top of the West in the NBA, and B, I think it's going to be very difficult for them to compete for a championship.
Yeah, and there was this whole narrative yesterday about how because Mike Conley came back to the Jazz, that this really helped the Jazz reputation with free agents, and Mike Conley's helping turn Utah into a basketball destination, and I just don't necessarily agree with that. I think that Mike Conley came back because he's comfortable here. I think he came back because Salt Lake's a great place to live. I think he came back because he has a great role on this team, and he knows that if he plays and he stays healthy, that they're going to be in a better spot. And I can appreciate that. If I'm Mike Conley, I totally understand. You got a point to prove, bro. I get it. But at the same time, let's not joke around or try to tell ourselves some lie about the fact that the Lakers are a more attractive free agent destination than Utah is. That's just the facts of the case. So when I look at this roster, I think as a Jazz fan, you should be really happy about it. I think you should be, you should be pretty optimistic about what this team is going to be able to do. But I also think that has to come with the caveat of if they're healthy. I think as a Jazz fan, I don't really want to have, next season or this coming season rather, I don't want to have the discussion of, oh my God, we're so surprised that Mike Conley got hurt. Because that's not going to be a surprise, Oh my God, why are they only playing Mike 25 minutes last night against a crappy-ass team, whoever that is? Well, because they're load managing him. They're saving him. So I'm telling you, early in the year, Mike Conley is going to be rested a lot. I can almost guarantee that. So we'll see. Now, moving on from Mike, if they move Joe and they can turn one player into two players, that would be great. That would be awesome if they could get that done. That gives you more bench. That gives you more leash. That gives you a lot of options.
Yeah, and I think you have to be of the mindset that you have to improve your wings. That's where your focus has to be right now because, again, if you bring back the Royce O'Neal, Joe Ingles, Bojan Bogdanovic triumvirate, you're not better than you were last year. You got massively exposed in the postseason. I think we knew all season long, on this show anyways, we talked about their lack of athleticism that was an issue all season long. And I think that continues to be a story in this club because they haven't gotten more athletic. I mean, they are who they are. Now, playing a guy like Elijah Hughes, which I think is universally accepted that's going to happen, that's going to make you more athletic. But if you look at what this roster is right now, Jordan Clarkson is not a versatile player. He's kind of a one-trick pony, right? Mm-hmm. If you look at Joe Ingles, Bojan Bogdanovic, Udoka Azubuike, I think, is a very much an unknown player in these conversations because you don't know what you're going to get from him. Backup center's a hole on this roster right now, and you're going to have to find that. And Tony Jones at The Athletic was reporting that they're interested in Pascal from Golden State. Well, let's see what that looks like. I mean, he's an interesting guy. Certainly, I know that he and Donovan Mitchell are very close friends. That's not a secret. I would be interested in that move. But I think you also have to bring in somebody that, for lack of a better word, has maybe that attitude of winning. And coming from Golden State, right now, I don't know that you're going to get that. I really don't know that you're going to get that because you've struggled with injuries the last couple of years. I look at, the other guys that, are cap holding you right now, like Juwan Morgan, Jarrell Brantley, Trent Forrest. Those guys are not going to impact this team this year. I just don't see how any of those guys make a huge impact or play big minutes on this team. Guys like Oni, sure, I can see that. He's a defensive guy. But Oni looks terrified to shoot the basketball most of the time, So you're going to have to go outside the circle. You're going to have to go out and get somebody that you believe can help you on the wings, Jake. And I think that's going to be difficult. You're going to be kind of bottom feeding off of who the free agents are.
Yeah, well, and I think being that this is the choice that they have, to re-sign, and bring back some of these younger guys that they had on the team last year, or to try to make deals to potentially bring in some athleticism on the wings. to me, this is why I wasn't a big fan of the Mike Conley deal, and why I'm not a big fan of Rudy's deal, and why I'm not a big fan of just the construction of the roster right now. I mean, again, this isn't, the current regime obviously is paying the price for some of these, some of these decisions, and I think they're doing a good job so far. But to me, I can just already see it. I can envision the issues that are going to plague this team most of the season, which is because you don't have a great backup center. Even if they go and get Pascal, like, you don't have a great backup center. There's nobody coming. It's not like you've got Rashawn Holmes coming off the bench or something. It's not like you've got that awesome backup guy coming in the game for 10 minutes at a time. So to me, I can already see a situation where Quinn's going to have to figure out, what does this team look like without Rudy on the floor? Because a lot of nights, I guarantee you, with what the Clippers did to them in the postseason, that will roll into next season. We will see that more regularly in the postseason. So my question straight up right now is, okay, so if teams are going to do to the Jazz on a nightly basis what the Clippers did, or they're going to try to do that, what is the answer? Where do you go to battle that or combat that or account for that? I mean, to me, the only answer is not having Rudy on the floor, which is not an option for you. So that's why I say, like, the trading Joe Ingles is almost a must at this point. You have to. You've got to move him and get wing athleticism, even if they're just average-ass players, even if they're not giving you even 15 a night. Like, you have to have guys who can play some defense on this team. And that, to me, is what they should be prioritizing. With all due respect to Golden State and Pascal and what he brings, backup center is hardly the priority, in my opinion. I think you got to go and find guys that can play defense, because at least then you can play small with those guys when Rudy's not in the game. And that's the route that I would go.
Yeah, and I think the thing you also have to remember is, with the favors trade, you create a trade exception because you didn't take salary back in return, which creates that trade exception. I think it's $9.7 million. So you have some deals that you can make. And I think that's why there was some panic amongst Jazz fans yesterday when the Jazz were being very quiet. I think you're just waiting to see who's available. And I think that's going to take a few days. I mean, I think the Jazz could trade Joe Ingles right now to Cleveland, Detroit, or Golden State if they wanted to. Those three teams were very prominent yesterday in the people that we were talking to. And I just think that they could make that deal anytime they want.
Yeah.
I think that on top of your mid-levels, on top of your taxpayer, on top of your trade exceptions, I think you have some room to operate. And I think whether that's Pascal or somebody else, I think that's what you have to do. You just don't have a lot of room to operate. And if Rudy Gay truly is a guy that, has been tied to the Lakers and the Jazz, we've heard Rudy Gay's name linked to this team for a couple of weeks. If Rudy Gay truly is the guy you bring in, I'm okay with that. You're not going to be a championship caliber team with that. I think you need somebody, and I don't know who that is, frankly, because a lot of the big free agents came off the board yesterday. A lot of the affordable free agents came off the board. But I think you need somebody, and Alpha is probably a little strong, but you need somebody that doesn't mind breaking somebody off. You need somebody that has the ability to do that. I think that a guy like a Rudy Gay certainly brings you veteran presence, certainly brings you, the ability that you're looking for. But when you talk about rounding out a roster, did anybody do that better than the Lakers did yesterday? I look at, look at the Bulls. Look at the money they gave to Alex Caruso. That's a very dangerous deal for them. To give him 4 years, $9.2 million for a guy that's never gotten close to that. But you look at the Lakers with Ariza, Ellington, Dwight Howard, Kent Bazemore. Kent Bazemore was a very nice pickup. I look at Ellington, Ariza, and Bazemore. They all shoot the three. That's what that team needed. That's what that team got.
Yeah.
And I think, by the way, bringing back Dwight Howard really makes a difference for them. He was great 2 years ago. He clearly showed he can still stir the pot in Philly last year.
And he has that toughness that the Lakers lack.
Yeah, so I look at that. I look at what the Chicago Bulls did yesterday. You want to talk about winners in free agency yesterday? I look at the Chicago Bulls with Lonzo Ball and Alex Caruso. I look at the fact that they were able to cut Daniel Tice's weight. I really like what they did. I think certainly right now, I look at where the Chicago Bulls and the LA Lakers are. Those are two teams that absolutely got better yesterday. And so when we bring up those teams, I look at the Denver Nuggets, and this is to your conversation that we were having for the last month.
Yeah.
The Western Conference is getting better, not worse.
Getting better every day.
I look at what the Denver Nuggets did yesterday, and again, I just say to myself, Denver had a nice little day yesterday with Will Barton and JaMychal Green and Jeff Green, and I look at that they let JaVale McGee go, and again, I think a really nice pickup for the Phoenix Suns. I want to say JaVale McGee went to the Suns on a 1-year deal. That's a very nice pickup by the Phoenix Suns. I look at Denver, though. I really like the Will Barton deal. It's $16 million a year for a premier point guard. That's a pretty good number.
Well, and think about the dynamic it creates too. I mean, last year, Jazz fans are sitting here saying, "Well, we beat Denver. What's the issue here? Why should we be worried about Denver?" Well, you should be worried about Denver because Jamal Murray's coming back, and ACL surgery is no longer the horrible thing that it used to be. Guys are coming back from that all the time and having great careers off of it. So, I would expect Jamal to be the same guy, maybe even a bit better than he was before the injury. So you take Jamal Murray, you pair him with Barton, add Michael Porter Jr. to that mix, and add the reigning MVP in Nikola Jokic, and I think you have a pretty good, starting core there, and then obviously your fifth is flexible. You're going to do different things with that depending on who you're playing. And then you start getting into the bench, and that's where I start having concerns, because this is where I think when we talk about these other Western Conference teams, the bench, the guys coming off the bench to play in that second unit role are really where the Jazz, I feel like, are going to struggle and are going to have to find a way to, not get just taken out of games.
Yeah, you're going to, for the second year in a row, the Utah Jazz are going to lack depth on their bench. They are. I also look at Phoenix. They got their two guards back. Cam Payne and Chris Paul both went back. Adding JaVale McGee, that's a championship player that is a smart, intelligent player that can mentor a guy like DeAndre Ayton.
And he can run.
And those are three really good moves for the Phoenix Suns. And, getting Cameron Payne back was not a sure bet. Cam Payne had other offers. It took less money to go back to Phoenix because he talked about the winning culture and the attitude. I'm telling you, that matters. And when you talk about that Mike Conley thing where everybody was talking about, Mike Conley means that other players want to. No, it doesn't. It doesn't, because the Jazz haven't won. Last year's disappointment is a hangover now.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to prove that you're past that, and I don't see it this year.
Think about it. I mean, with the Suns, you can say, okay, we got to the finals and we lost. We lost to the Bucks. Like that's what happened. But we feel like our best is better than their best, and we didn't show that. And by the way, not that this is an excuse on any level, but I do think it's important in the conversation. They did come out yesterday that Chris Paul had, surgery, and now he's past whatever injury was plaguing him, So I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I have a tough time, just like with Conley, I have a tough time believing Chris Paul is going to be 100% healthy, assuming that they do get back to the finals, which is far from a guarantee at this point, So to me, I just feel like the culturally thing, the culture thing with players coming to your team, the Suns are in a better spot because they went to the NBA Finals, and they did that because Chris Paul went there, which shines well on Book and everybody else, and the Jazz didn't. That's the struggle.
Yeah, I'm curious to see now what happens with the rest of free agency, because I think you have some real gems out there. I mean, Reggie Jackson's a guy we talk about all the time on this show. My argument would be he's probably the best available remaining free agent. Talon Horton-Tucker's not available.
No.
A lot of people have talked about him. A lot of people have talked about Josh Hart. A lot of people have talked about DeMar DeRozan.
Yeah.
I think DeMar DeRozan is looking for the perfect deal, and I think he's going to get that. Spencer Dinwiddie going to Washington. It's interesting the way that Washington has become now a destination.
Yeah.
And Bradley Beal, Bradley Beal's a guy where you can say, Brad Beal's a guy where you can say, hey, he stayed in Washington. Sorry. He stayed in Washington, and now guys want to go and play with him.
Mm-hmm.
I think they saw that run that they made to the playoffs last year, and I think that makes them attractive. But I think if I look at some of the names that are out there, Kawhi Leonard's not available.
No.
I mean, I think he's going back to the LA Clippers. I think everybody
Definitely.
realizes that. I think when I look at John Collins is an interesting guy. Is John Collins really available?
Probably not.
Probably not.
But
I think
I'd still call.
He's restricted. I think he's going back to Atlanta.
I'd still call.
And I look at some other guys like that Jared Allen deal in Cleveland's insane,
Bro.
I mean, that's
you want to talk about
my
a guy getting the bag, like a guy who out of nowhere gets $100 million,
dude,
bro. Like, wow, that's what the average ass NFL player's talking about. Hey, this random ass guy in the league got an NBA contract, and I can't even get. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me correct it. Some rando in the NFL, complaining about not getting paid. This is the kind of contract that perpetuates
$20 million on a center. That's a lot of money. All right, let's get some of your comments in here because I see a lot of you are in this morning. Brylark says, morning, guys. How about that Mike Conley deal? Jeremy Bolton says, Conley deal better than the Chris Paul deal? No, it's not. Listen, the Chris Paul deal is a lot of money, and he's going to be 74 years old when that contract expires. I get that. For the Phoenix Suns, they can now turn around and run back the team that went to the NBA Finals. Chris Paul had wrist surgery. Water's wet. Chris Paul was hurt during the playoffs.
You have a deal.
Yeah. So you're going to pay him that money because you have two superstars on that team and you got a bunch of young dudes that you're going to sign. I mean, that deal makes perfect sense. Perfect sense if you're the Phoenix Suns. It shows that as an organization, you're committed to winning championships and playing for championships. And by the way, the other thing it does is it takes away a lot of the questions about leadership in Devin Booker. Because I think it brings some stability. Is stability the right word? I think it brings some stability to that club.
I think it brings consistency. I think consistency and stability are what the club needed. And I think that, a lot of people, I'm sure in the comments, and I can't see them, this is just purely a guess, but I'm sure a lot of people are like, well, if Chris Paul's deal is such a great deal, Mike Conley's deal has to be even better because they got him for less. But here's the thing. Yes, they did get him for less. The problem is that this team is unproven. This team did not go to the NBA Finals. Hell, this team didn't even sniff the Western Conference Finals. So my point is that with the Chris Paul deal, that deal had to get done,
yes.
And they had to pay him because you're not going to allow your NBA Finals worthy team to just kind of walk away, especially, again, I know I keep saying this, but especially in an offseason where the Western Conference is going to come back with a vengeance. I with all due respect to the Eastern Conference, the Western Conference is going to be better this year.
But the thing that stands out to me, the one of the teams that lost yesterday, the Dallas Mavericks are in trouble.
Yeah.
I don't think other free agents around the league want to play with Luka Doncic.
Yeah.
The Mavericks were unable to unload Porzingis, and they pretty much swung and missed at everybody they went after. From Bobby Portis, you name the guy they targeted, Kyle Lowry, Mike Conley.
Yeah.
They didn't get a single one of their premier free agents that they targeted. They brought back Tim Hardaway Jr. on a $72 million deal. But I think one of the things that's been so interesting in the Olympics is Luka Doncic screaming at officials during the Olympics. Like nothing has changed. This guy is, in my opinion, if there's an overrated superstar in the NBA, it's Luka Doncic.
Yeah.
He is not a guy that I think is attractive to other NBA free agents. And I think Dallas had a very bad day yesterday.
No doubt.
And I don't know. And listen, maybe this is just me. I don't know. But I struggle with a lot of the deals that were done yesterday. I thought were actually well thought out, pragmatic deals, right? If you look at if you want to look at the biggest deals, from Chris Paul, Jared Allen obviously was questionable. But if you go on down to Semi Ojeleye, to Milwaukee, or Wayne Ellington to the Lakers for $2.6 million. Wayne Ellington, a 42% 3-point shooter, went to the Lakers for $2.6 million.
Yeah.
There were a lot of really good deals done, right? A lot of really good deals. Yeah, so it's a little surprising to me that Dallas really couldn't get anybody.
Yeah, because I don't think that other free agents who are notable respect Luka. I think everybody knows. Here's the thing: when these guys are all playing against Luka all season long, whoever it is, they whether it's one game or they have a lot of experience. You know who guys are when you're playing against them, and it tells you what it would be like to play with them. And I think that whether it is the complaining to the officials thing, everybody does that. So let's just throw that out just for the sake of conversation. Let's just throw that out. When you look at his on the bench antics, I really think that's what hurts him. The crying on the bench after games,
throwing water bottles,
like throwing a tantrum, like all that childish stuff that he does. I can't believe we have to say this, but for a guy who's capable of giving you 40 or maybe even 50 in a postseason game that has your season on the line, this guy has maturing to do, and that's why I think that the Porzingis thing is an issue. That's why I think that nobody wants to go there, and frankly, that's why I think they didn't have a chance at Kyle Lowry or any of these other guys, because Kyle wanted to go to Miami. Mike, clearly, as it's been reported now and described, never talked to anybody else, wanted to go to Utah. And all these other second-tier guys want to go to the Lakers or want to go to an already dominant team. So if you're Dallas, you're sitting here like, man, like we love Luka, but this is not ideal at all. I mean, we have issues here.
Yeah, Kent says, so you're saying Bullocks isn't worth anything? Well, I'm not saying that he's not worth anything, but is Reggie Bullock a guy that you're like, oh my God?
Why are we talking about Reggie Bullock?
Because he signed with the Mavericks. Like, that's why we're talking about Reggie Bullock.
I mean, he's not.
He's a $5 million player, man.
I'm talking about impactful players. I'm talking about guys that will make a difference. I'm talking about Kyle Lowry, CP3, Mike Conley. I'm talking about all these guys. I'm talking about DeMar DeRozan. These guys that are rumored about Lonzo Ball. All these guys that are great players in the NBA, that are productive, that can make a tangible difference. Yeah, Norman Powell, exactly. He got paid,
Yeah.
Gary Trent Jr.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I just thought Dallas was, in talking to people yesterday, it was shocking how poorly Dallas did.
Well, and they're right in that same boat, too. I mean, think about it. Think about the way their playoffs went. They lost to the Clippers early. They didn't have a deep postseason run.
James Knight says Jingles won't go anywhere. Utah got exposed in the postseason because of injuries, much like the Lakers, much like Brooklyn. Well, I mean, sure, but the guys who were on the floor couldn't defend. And when they were healthy, the guys on the floor couldn't defend. I mean, one of the things that was so shocking about this Jazz team last year, and obviously we saw it in the playoffs, even against Memphis in the playoffs, I think we saw it. They struggled to defend. And Don was healthy. For the most part, he was as healthy as he was going to be in the Memphis series, and they couldn't defend.
Yeah, I mean, let's not forget the points in the paint stats. I mean, they're one of the worst teams at defending the paint, even though they have the Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, and I think that was a story all season long. So, I mean, I know you're a huge Ingles guy, but, I mean, Joe Ingles isn't going to be on this team. I'd be really surprised if we broke training camp and Joe Ingles was still a Jazz man. My guess is he winds up Cleveland, Detroit, or Golden State would be the teams that I would think.
I think it's Cleveland or Golden State. I mean, Detroit's cool and everything, but like Cleveland has more to offer, and I think that the Jazz, they're either trying to add wing talent or they're trying to add a backup center. It's one of those
but you're
two.
Not going to trade for another body, in my opinion. What you're going to do is you're trying to unload Joe Ingles' $13 million salary to a team that is building. And that's why, because let's not forget, he's an expiring contract, Joe Ingles is. So I think what you're going to see is that teams who are close are going to take on a guy like Joe Ingles because that's going to give them cap space. And I think teams like Cleveland, Detroit, I think it's one of the reasons that Golden State's interested, although you'd have to take a body back in that deal because they're a luxury taxpayer. But, I just think the bottom line is I think Joe Ingles is not going to be here. Because Quinn Snyder, if we're looking at, dollars to donuts here, you can do things with Bojan Bogdanovic. He's a guy who, while he's not a real good lateral defender, he doesn't defend laterally at all. If you don't ask him to do that, and if he just drops, you can do things with him defensively. I think that offensively, there's no question that Bojan Bogdanovic is a central figure to what they did offensively last year, whether that was shooting the three or it was really nice to see him get back to playing below the free throw line, running the break. I thought, Bogey trying to dunk on guys always didn't end well, but the effort was nice.
Yeah.
You don't have any of that with Joe Ingles. Joe Ingles is one thing. He is a catch and shoot 3-point guy. That's what he is. He's not a great defender anymore. He's not your best defender anymore. I think that's the reality
He's not in
of
Paul
Joe
George's
Ingles.
head anymore.
No, yeah, right. Remember that. Brylark says Utah got exposed because of their lack of athleticism. Joe being the prime problem, as well as Bogey, Rudy, and at times Royce. Yeah, I think Royce O'Neal's another guy that you could leverage.
He's the biggest. Oh my God, this guy's a great defender, but he's actually not a great defender. He's the prime example of that. So I don't know that they're bringing him back either.
I think Jeremy Bolton's bitter.
I'm sure he is, and I don't blame the guy. But at the end of the day, it's not just us saying this about Jingles, man. I mean, if you go around and read, a lot of people are talking about the fact that it's time.
Bolton says, man, loving the positivity for the Jazz. They should just trade everyone because they aren't going anywhere. They're a trash team.
This is what happens.
The Lakers are going to win, and of course the Jazz are better by signing Conley. He's healthy right now. That's better than last year.
I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. It's frustrating. Again, we always get, and for those of you who listen every day, we'll always get, occasionally the guy who's like, why do you guys hate the Jazz? And we don't hate the Jazz, And I'm not saying Jeremy's saying that, but I just understand that it's frustrating to have these conversations and feel like, man, what do we need to do to be a championship caliber team? And that's why I think right now that's not the conversation you're having.
Not at all.
That's just not where you are. I think you're far away from that.
I don't know how you fix this.
Once they move on from Rudy, then you can start having a conversation.
But I think you just got to come to the rationale that that's not going to happen anytime soon.
Well, then you're not going to be a championship caliber team. I'm sorry. You can't have look at the team that won the NBA championship this year, or the two teams that went to the finals. Both of them. Whatever you want to call Giannis, everybody refers to him as a big. Whether you want to call him an athletic big or whatever, he plays big. He does. He plays in the paint. And when you can get that kind of production in the paint, it opens up a lot of options for you. And the Jazz don't have that luxury. They're playing outside to in, whereas everybody else in the league is playing inside out. And that's the problem. And that's why I say they're going to get to the postseason. They're going to be in these series, but ultimately they're going to come up short because you can't rely on the three ball the entire year and in the postseason expect to win.
Well, and again, I'll just say everybody around the Jazz got better.
Yeah.
And I think, obviously there's some guys out there, whether that's Carmelo Anthony or whoever, that are question marks. But, if you look at the Lakers, they got better. If you look at the Suns, they got better. If you look at the Clippers, they're going to get better. Bringing Batum back was a significant move for them. Mm-hmm. But you're all in on Kawhi Leonard at this point. The teams that Denver Nuggets got better. You look at the teams that you have to really compete with, and they all got better. They did the job yesterday, and the Jazz are kind of sitting here handcuffed, and I understand why that would be frustrating. Brylark says it's not that the Jazz are bad, it's that when you look at the competition, the Jazz just don't stand a chance because of how this roster is constructed. You're unwinding the Dennis Lindsay watch at this point.
Yeah, and that takes time.
It takes 2 years,
yeah.
And this. Look, I love the deal they did with Conley. It's an expensive deal, and I'm not even talking about this coming year. Next year and the year after, what is his production going to be like as he's 35, 36 years old? I don't know what that looks like. Casey Finlinson, everybody that will be competing with the Jazz got better yesterday. Does that mean the Jazz aren't good? No, but in my opinion, they aren't a championship club yet, correct?
Yeah, that's a great way to say it.
Ryan Buckley says, Jazz aren't contenders with what other teams have done. Jeremy Bolton says, I can't believe the Chris Paul deal. Geezo, talk about handicapping your team in 2 years. But
yeah, well, you went to the NBA Finals, though, and that's the difference.
They're not in it for 2 years down the road.
Yeah,
They're
that's
in
the
it to
difference.
try and win a championship right now.
And let's dig into this just for a second. I know we talked about it before, but I want to make sure we're all on the same page with why the Chris Paul deal is better than the Mike Conley deal, okay? Now, on the surface, everyone's going to say, well, the Jazz got a steal. They got a deal. They signed for below market value, and that's great.
Yep.
The problem is the risk that comes with Mike Conley makes it not as valuable of a deal to the club. When you look at what Chris Paul brings, yes, he played injured. Yes, he did. But he fought through the shoulder thing. He fought through the wrist thing. Now, did it cost him a championship? Yeah, it probably did because he just didn't show up. But at the end of the day, you got to the NBA Finals. Devin Booker had a chance to have his moment, and he came up short. That's just what happens in the league.
Yep.
So when you re-sign Chris Paul and we talk about cap implications and we apply the same logic to the Suns as we do to the Jazz, yeah, their cap is going to be jacked in 2 or 3 seasons, but they don't care about that. They're going to live with that. They're here for right now to win a championship because they believe that they can get that done. I'm here to tell you that it's unlikely that they get back to the NBA Finals because I do think that the Lakers are going to be built differently this year. They're going to be built. They're going to be a stronger team. They're going to be a deeper team. And I think that's going to, really propel them and take them places. But at the end of the day, the Chris Paul deal is better because the Suns actually did win the Western Conference. They actually did go to the NBA Finals.
Yeah.
And they can say, okay, if we bring this core back, we could potentially get back to the NBA Finals and have a look at winning again. And that's why that Chris Paul deal is better than Conley's deal.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I find so fascinating is just that you have to find a way to compete every year to get better. And that the mediocre teams don't do that. I look at what Golden State's gone through. Golden State's had significant injuries, but they've been on the cusp. They've been right here. They weren't supposed to be a playoff team last year. They weren't supposed to do what they did to the Lakers last year. They weren't, you just weren't supposed to.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that's pretty remarkable. And, I look at some of the trends in this league right now. The trend of overpaying guys for the fact of overpaying guys is pretty rare these days. Jared Allen aside, is pretty rare these days. I think one of the things that I personally am surprised by, I'm surprised that we have not seen more trades. I'm surprised that we have not seen more big names being traded to create more cap space. I'm surprised that, that we, and maybe it's because we have super teams and duos and trios and
yeah,
that absolutely could be why that's
the
happening.
setup is different now. It used to be that you had these blockbuster deals because you didn't have you had the blockbuster deals because we weren't in a time where you already had the duos and the trios together. This year, a lot of the deals that are taking place are the second-tier player because all the duos and trios are together. You've already got LeBron and AD. You've already got the boys in Brooklyn. If you look at the Knicks, they're being more aggressive because they don't have their trio or duo yet, so that's why you're seeing them make so many moves. But I just think overall, you look at the Kyle Lowry thing.
Yeah.
Kyle Lowry and the Heat clearly had the sign and trade deal all worked out for him, and all that was already lined out before free agency, air quotes, officially opened. So I just think that we're kind of in a different time now, and I think that, and we've discussed this before, with the way caps are handled now, it's typically 2 or 3 players at the top making anywhere between 20 to 25% of your cap each, and then the rest of the cap is for the second-tier players to split and kind of share. And that's kind of where things are at. Look at the Jazz cap. That's where they're at. Now they're paying 3 guys over $20 million a year. I mean, that's a lot of money, and that puts you in a very precarious situation. So I just think that these blockbuster deals are not happening anymore because that's just not for whatever reason. That the league has shifted away from that. So I still think this is one of the best deadlines we've had in a minute.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And by the way, I also think that the league is maturing, changing. Front offices, with all the turnover we've seen in the younger front offices, I think you're seeing the Chicago Bulls yesterday. I'm actually excited. Lauri Markkanen's one of the guys that's on the market, by the way. Somebody's going to pick up Lauri Markkanen. That deal's going to get done. the Chicago Bulls yesterday, the Lonzo Ball deal tells you that they're serious.
Yeah.
Like, it tells you, hey, Alex Caruso and Lonzo Ball completely remake that roster. And you hear Zach LaVine saying, "Hey, I want an extension in Chicago." Like, the Bulls with a new general manager, a new front office, a new way of doing business. It's not John Paxson anymore and Gar Hurd, and I mean you're seeing that younger front offices that are a little more fluid and a little more pragmatic with their money and their principles. Those are the teams that are doing well.